Have you ever stopped to imagine what it would be like to live in total control of your emotions, regardless of internal pressures or the stress of everyday life? Imagine a life where, even in the face of adversity, you remain serene and centered. This is exactly what Stoicism, an ancient philosophy perfected in Rome, offers us: an unshakable serenity in the face of the turbulence of modern life. Stoicism teaches us to differentiate between what we can change and what we must accept. As Epictetus said, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Today we will explore 9 toxic habits that the Stoics avoided in order to maintain their inner peace, principles that are incredibly relevant in our modern world, where we are constantly bombarded by digital demands and public exposure. Stay with me until the end of this video and share these valuable lessons with anyone you think will also benefit. I promise that this will be a profound reflection, capable of transforming the way you see and react to the world around you. As Marcus Aurelius reminded us, accept the things to which fate has brought you, and love the people with whom fate has brought you, but do so with all your heart. We'll start with the first toxic habit that the Stoics avoided: the inappropriate expression of negative emotions such as anger, frustration, sadness, and fear. For the Stoics, these unbridled passions were irrational and contrary to human nature, preventing us from maintaining control. The goal was to achieve apatheia, or emotional tranquility. This does not mean becoming insensitive, but rather understanding that the first involuntary emotions are natural. What matters is how we choose to react to them. For example, feeling deep sadness over the loss of a loved one is normal. The Stoics did not consider this innate sadness to be bad or shameful. However, they believed that we should be careful not to prolong suffering unnecessarily, avoiding the abyss of self-pity. They advised us to grieve privately, rationally, and with equanimity, as expressing our negative emotions without filtering can amplify temporary feelings and turn small issues into major dramas. The Stoics also remind us that our emotional state is often fleeting. If we let ourselves be carried away by a temporary wave of feelings, we can end up giving epic proportions to something minor. Showing our emotions in an unbridled way not only affects us, but also impacts those around us. So get ready for a journey of self-knowledge and serenity. Let's learn together how to avoid these toxic habits and live a more balanced and peaceful life. But first, just make sure you're already subscribed to the channel, because the next videos will be a series of Stoic content that will help you find balance, wisdom, and serenity in a world full of challenges. Have you ever noticed how letting our negative emotions, such as anger and frustration, run wild can create discomfort and tension around us? This uncontrolled expression not only upsets others, but also causes us to lose authority and leadership skills. Let's explore how the Stoics dealt with these emotions and how we can apply these lessons in our lives to maintain inner peace and mental clarity. First, the Stoics warn us that showing our uncontrolled passions can be used against us. By revealing our weaknesses, we become easy targets for manipulation. It is crucial to be careful when opening up emotionally, to avoid having these vulnerabilities exploited by others. Second, and perhaps more importantly, the Stoics believe that releasing all of our emotional burdens without first dealing with them rationally does not relieve us, but rather reinforces these negative emotions. Notice the phenomenon: the more we express our anger, the more intense it grows. Shouting in the heat of anger does not calm us. On the contrary, it fuels our irritation. However, if we pause, take a deep breath, and calmly analyze the situation, anger tends to dissipate. The Stoics propose a powerful exercise for dealing with negative emotions: talking to them. Ask yourself, why are you here? What do I need you for? Are you helping to resolve the situation, or are you just making things worse? This detachment allows us to control the emotion instead of being controlled by it. This way, we can reason and discern the best response, rather than reacting impulsively. Another essential technique is to view emotions as transitory and constantly evolving. Nothing lasts forever, neither great frustration nor immense joy. Everything is fleeting, and this perspective helps to minimize the intensity of what we feel, preventing us from clinging to those moments. And this does not mean repressing or pretending that we do not feel anything. There is room for expressing negative feelings privately and rationally with people we trust. We can seek prudent advice from close friends to soothe us if necessary. But a massive dissemination of these emotions on social media, for example, is not healthy. Nor is it healthy to accumulate them without processing them, as this generates bitterness and resentment. In public, the Stoics sought to project equanimity, wisdom, and self-control, an emotional leadership that inspires confidence. In the world of social media, we see many people expressing indignation and fury, often chronically. It is understandable to want to vent, but we must be careful not to compulsively feed anger and irrational hatred. Think about the image and energy we want to radiate to others. Have you ever imagined the peace you could achieve by accepting life's adversities with serenity and wisdom? The Stoics teach us to face difficulties not as passive victims, but as wise warriors who change what is under their control and accept the rest without unnecessary resistance. This attitude is not one of resignation, but of deep understanding and love of fate, known as amor fati. Amor fati means loving what life has in store for us, not just tolerating it, but truly appreciating each event as part of a greater whole. The Stoics believed that if we look at it with the right perspective, there is always something positive to be learned, even from the most difficult situations. This may seem almost masochistic at first. How can you love cancer, bankruptcy, a friend's betrayal, or the death of a child? It's not about minimizing the pain of these experiences, but about avoiding futile resistance and focusing on acceptance and growth. When we curse every negative aspect of reality, we don't solve anything and only make ourselves more unhappy. Instead, the Stoics encourage us to accept what we cannot change and focus our energy on possible solutions. We become part of the solution, not the problem. In the age of social media, it's easy to fall into the trap of constantly complaining about the state of the world without offering concrete solutions. This behavior doesn't change anything and only fuels discord and polarization. Even in the face of great hardship, the Stoics suggest maintaining our integrity and growing with what we have. An extreme example is Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor and philosopher, who faced wars, betrayals, and plagues during his reign. In his writings, he always showed equanimity and focused on managing problems with prudence and self-discipline, promoting decisive action rather than sterile complaints. Another inspiring example is that of James Stockdale, a fighter pilot who was captured and tortured for years in Vietnam. He survived this hell using the Stoic teachings he had studied at university. Stockdale shows us that, even in the most extreme situations, Stoic philosophy offers tools to maintain sanity and resilience. The message is clear: instead of endlessly lamenting what cannot be changed, focus on solutions. By accepting difficulties with equanimity and wisdom, we can transform our lives and grow from adversity. Let us adopt this Stoic stance and seek a more balanced and serene life, where we control our emotions and respond wisely to challenges. The Stoics teach us that instead of cursing our circumstances or our captors, we should accept our reality with integrity and focus. James Stockdale, for example, a fighter pilot who was captured and tortured for years in Vietnam, found strength in the Stoic teachings he had studied. He did not allow despair to take over, but focused on what he could still control, day after day, enduring with dignity. In our daily lives, even when we face less extreme challenges, we can apply this Stoic virtue. Of course, it is natural to vent and express frustrations, but we must be careful not to get stuck in an endless cycle of complaining. We must ask ourselves, is this problem worth so much attention and suffering? Is there anything I can do to solve it? This reflection helps us regain perspective and personal power. Instead of fueling discord on social media, we can promote peace and share realistic solutions and inspiring gestures. There is enough unhappiness in the world. Our words and actions should contribute to truth, beauty, and harmony. Each of us can create microenvironments of peace and balance in our circle of influence. Maintaining this broad view and equanimity is not easy, especially in moments of great sadness, anger, or frustration. It is in these moments that we can use a powerful Stoic technique, visualizing our situation from outer space, as a tiny in the immensity of the cosmos. This helps us to put our problems into perspective and remember that are fleeting in the vastness of time and space. Everything changes, everything passes, and life goes on. Instead of avoiding or ignoring the suffering inherent in life, we should respond to fate with courage and equanimity. We should not lament what cannot be cured, but be grateful and proactive about what we can improve. Adopting a more fatty, or love of fate, means accepting reality as it is and making the best of it. The Stoics also advised against arrogance and ostentation. For them, humility and modesty were essential virtues. Taking excessive pride in material or personal successes is indicative of deep insecurity and is unethical. This behavior is especially relevant on social media, where many build exaggerated identities. The Stoics believed that focusing too much on external aspects such as money, physical appearance, fame, and possessions reveals a hierarchy of false values. What is truly valuable is our character, our virtues, and our internal abilities. Being a person who loves, forgives, and improves oneself every day is the true achievement. Anything other than this is considered vain and ridiculous. There is a fable that illustrates this point perfectly. One day, the sun and the wind competed to see who was the most powerful in trying to take the cloak from an old man. The wind blew with extreme arrogance, but the more it tried, the more the old man clung to his cloak. Then it was the sun's turn, which simply shone brighter, and the old man took off his coat with joy. This story shows that when we boast arrogantly, we only create distance or envy in others, missing the opportunity to shine with our own light. The current trend of showing off wealth to impress is a clear example of a harmful attitude. Constantly posting photos of luxurious homes, extravagant cars, expensive jewelry, and exotic trips around the world seeks to provoke admiration or envy, but rarely translates into true respect. The Stoics did not promote extreme poverty, but the importance of simplicity and self-sufficiency as the basis for tranquility. We do not need as many material things as we believe to be happy and fulfilled. The Stoic indifference to adiaphora, that is, those external things that do not depend on us, is crucial. This includes material possessions, fame, and even the health of the body, since they do not determine our happiness or our inner virtue. Of course, we prefer to have good health and the basic goods to survive, but becoming addicted to accumulating and displaying external things is a sign of a disoriented soul. Our pride should come from our daily efforts to improve ourselves as people, to withstand the blows of life and transcend worldly attachments. This is the true source of dignity. Boasting about qualities such as physical beauty or innate intelligence, which are natural talents given by chance, does not demonstrate a superior character. In fact, someone less attractive or less intelligent, but thoughtful, is more admirable to a Stoic. A key technique the Stoics recommended is to imagine suddenly losing all your possessions and that precious celebrity, and finding yourself alone in an empty room. What would be left? Who would you be beyond the external? This visualization exercise reminds you of what really matters, cultivating wisdom, love, and willpower within yourself. By becoming aware of the psychological mechanisms behind arrogance and the desire for praise, you can begin to heal these underlying deficiencies. Imagine a world where you don't have to prove yourself to anyone. Your self-worth doesn't depend on the approval of others, and you don't have to play the exhausting game of seeking fame and applause. Instead, you channel your energy into more meaningful, spiritual, or community-based goals. By letting go of pride, you become a true servant of others, finding fulfillment in helping and contributing. One of the toxic habits that the Stoics avoided at all costs was the tendency to criticize and badmouth others in public. They understood how words can unfairly damage relationships and reputations. Instead, the Stoics promoted an understanding and caring attitude toward the failings of others. This doesn't mean being naive or passively accepting everything. Of course, there are reprehensible actions that should be denounced, and the Stoics never hesitated to stand up for just causes. But they did so within certain limits, distinguishing between criticizing ideas or behaviors and directly attacking the morality of those who express them. We can judge actions without permanently denigrating a person's character. We all make mistakes and have our flaws. Unfortunately, today we see the opposite on social media and in public debates, polarized and vitriolic discourses, where there is little tolerance for the slightest flaw in others, with no room for nuance or second chances. An unpopular opinion, a tasteless joke, or an unfortunate comment can be enough to permanently cancel someone, destroying their reputation and livelihood. From a Stoic perspective, this vengeful and justice-seeking instinct is part of the problem we face. We can denounce wrongdoing and demand accountability, but we must avoid becoming like those we criticize. The Stoics deeply distrusted majority opinion as an ethical standard, understanding that morality is independent of social approval. The masses can be irrational and ruthless when unleashed. We often see people who enthusiastically participate in the destruction of someone who is criticized by everyone, but who then hypocritically post phrases about not judging, being compassionate, and not feeding hatred. This false morality of appearances is what the Stoics tried to unmask. We can talk about virtue and be politically correct, but it is our actions that reveal our true character. Are we really faithful to the principles we proclaim, or is it all just a social performance? The Stoics believed that criticism should be constructive and directed, not made behind the person's back where they do not have a chance to defend themselves. Gossiping and judging without giving the other side a chance to express themselves is morally reprehensible and only fuels distortions and resentment. When public criticism is necessary, it should be done in a benevolent spirit, aiming at reform and not punishment. We condemn the error, not the person, always appealing to reason and to each person's ability to rectify their ways. Even in the worst criminals, there is a seed of virtue that we must not stifle with excessive contempt. Believing in the potential. The idea of human redemption is essential to the Stoics, who preach patience and a more compassionate, yet harsh, judgment. Another toxic habit that the Stoics avoided is the single-minded pursuit of fame, social status, and external validation. In an age of social media, this need to please and capture the admiration of others has intensified. Sure, we all like recognition, but there is a fine line between accepting the occasional compliment and depending on the approval of others to feel good about ourselves. This insatiable thirst for external validation feeds a fragile and insecure ego, always at the mercy of the opinions of others. True independence of thought and inner peace come from living according to our own values, not those of others. On social media, many people project perfect lives, accumulating followers and likes, but behind this facade there is often a deep emptiness. Influencers and celebrities who seem to have it all often struggle with insecurities, emotional emptiness, and even dark thoughts. Therefore, instead of relentlessly seeking external approval, we should focus on cultivating our character, our virtues, and our inner abilities. True value lies in loving, forgiving, and improving ourselves each day. We should be humble and self-sufficient, finding fulfillment in our daily efforts to become better people. After all, as the Stoics remind us, our true worth comes from within, not from possessions or fame. The constant pursuit of approval and flattery never fills the gaps within. True self-esteem does not need relentless external validation, it is cultivated from within. The Stoics understood that the majority opinion does not define truth. They knew that virtue and happiness come not from applause and trophies, but from sticking to our own values and maintaining an independent mind. It is not about being a rebel without a cause or automatically opposing what others think. It is about having the wisdom to listen to different perspectives with humility, taking advantage of what is useful, but always maintaining a critical and independent mind. The Stoics encourage us not to betray our principles or adopt ideas just because they are popular. In a world of social media and politics, where many people repeat slogans without really thinking, this message is more relevant than ever. True maturity, according to Stoicism, is standing by our beliefs without needing a crowd to applaud us. When we do not depend on the approval of the masses, we learn to respect ourselves and maintain our dignity and authenticity in a world that often pushes us towards superficiality. Another toxic habit that the Stoics avoided at all costs was anxiety and excessive fear about the future. They firmly believed in living in the present and focusing on what we can control. This does not mean being irresponsible or not planning for the future, but rather avoiding obsessive thoughts about disasters that may never happen. Epictetus advised not to worry about what might happen tomorrow, because the same care we have today will also be available in the future. It's curious how, despite humanity's incredible achievements, such as going to the moon and deciphering the human genome, we are still unable to relax because of our overactive imagination. We pride ourselves on our intelligence, but we remain slaves to a primal instinct that fears any possible threat. Instead of enjoying the present, we lose ourselves in worries about the future, increasing our anxiety, depression, and dissatisfaction. Studies show that most of our worries never materialize. When things go wrong, anticipatory anxiety ends up being an unnecessary waste of mental and emotional energy. Therefore, we must focus on the present, act wisely and courageously, and trust that we will be prepared to face the future when it arrives. The Stoics remind us that true peace and happiness come from living fully in the present moment, keeping our principles and our minds free from irrational fears. We often waste the present worrying about hypothetical problems. Worrying is like paying interest on a debt that may never exist. When we live in constant anxiety, imagining future catastrophes, we create our own mental hell. The more we cling to these catastrophic thoughts, the more fearful we feel and the more we suffer. It is interesting to observe how dogs live peacefully, enjoying the present moment without worrying about old age or death. Even after facing difficult situations, they quickly return to their natural state of simple joy. It is not about being desperately optimistic and believing that everything will always work out. The Stoics recognized that we will face difficulties, painful losses, and failures in life. The challenge is to accept these realities with courage and equanimity, without allowing fear of the future to paralyze us. When we busy ourselves inventing new problems, constantly imagining difficulties in work, health, or relationships, we guarantee that our present happiness will be ruined by self-fulfilling prophecies. The solution is not to deny future challenges or blindly trust that everything will resolve itself, but rather to cultivate emotional resilience to face them if they arise. Anxiety is like detonating bombs in our minds prematurely and counterproductively. Life is full of variables that we cannot fully predict, and sooner or later we will have to improvise, adapt, and move forward. Instead of wasting our days worrying about hypothetical problems, we should focus all our passion on doing our daily work to the best of our ability. Whether at work or in relationships, instead of worrying about the possibility of betrayal or abandonment, we should enrich our connections here and now. Let's focus on what we really control: our mindset, our habits, and the effort we put into our actions. Planning is important to reduce risks, but without the paranoia of wanting to predict and manage all of life's variables. Sooner or later, we will face unexpected situations, and that is when the ability to improvise and adapt will be crucial. Achieving this balance is not easy. It requires bravery and common sense to navigate the uncertainty that will always exist. Maturity lies in considering the future without spoiling the present, enjoying the journey while preparing for whatever comes. Ultimately, the only thing we can truly control is our will to improve each day and learn from the experiences we encounter along the way. The Eastern classics have a valuable lesson: do not expect anything from the future so as not to fear it excessively. Do not try to define what your ideal life will be like in 5 or 10 years, because reality will always take its own shape, whether you like it or not. The Stoics advise us to avoid showing excessive anxiety and fear about future events. Instead, we should live in the present moment with full awareness and wisdom, focusing on what we can control. This does not mean being irresponsible or neglecting to plan. Of course, we should take care of having a desirable future, but without allowing ourselves to be consumed by irrational anxiety about what has not yet happened and will probably never happen. Even if it does happen, mentally replaying an imaginary tragedy will not solve anything. It is natural to have some anxiety about health, finances, work and family, as it is part of the survival instinct. The problem arises when this tendency gets out of control and we are consumed by fear. When we spend more time worrying about a hypothetical and terrible future than facing the current reality, anxiety becomes toxic and counterproductive. This preventive mechanism, meant to protect us, begins to sabotage our quality of life and our ability to enjoy the present. It's easy to fall into this vicious cycle of imagined disasters that never happen but keep us awake at night. Precious years of life are wasted on useless anxieties that either resolve themselves or never materialize. The Stoics propose a simple but powerful shift in perspective by asking two key questions. Is this problem I'm worried about already happening? And should I deal with it now? If the answer is no, then there's no reason to worry about something hypothetical that may never happen. Painful and unpredictable situations can happen eventually, despite our best plans. This is part of life and its inherent ups and downs. Developing emotional resilience and the wisdom to overcome the inevitable is key. When something unexpected happens, you'll handle it much better if you haven't spent years being consumed by anxiety. So live in the present, focus on what you can control, and don't let fear of the future rob you of your peace and happiness today. After all, the only thing we can truly control is our will to improve each day. Let's face it, the paradox of anxiety is that those who live in a constant state of fear, trying to avoid any adversity or putting off important actions for fear of failure, often end up faring much worse when they do face major obstacles. This happens because chronic anxiety catches us off guard, without the necessary mental and emotional preparation. This condition becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, where the fear we harbor comes true. Instead of strengthening our abilities to cope with difficulties, we obsessively focus on our worst fears, wasting precious energy that could be used to prepare ourselves and face challenges with calm and confidence. The Stoics offer a crucial antidote to this anxiety, accepting that some things are inevitable and beyond our control. They call this amor fati, love of our fate. By embracing the idea that certain events, such as serious illness or the loss of when we face the inevitable, we are not being masochistic or defeatist. Instead, we are courageously acknowledging that life has beginnings and ends, and resisting this reality only increases our suffering. Of course, we should take sensible precautions and live our best lives, but when we face the inevitable, we can choose to move through these experiences with equanimity. Whether we are facing the loss of a job, the end of a relationship, or a challenging medical diagnosis, it is normal to feel pain and grief. However, we are called to move forward with dignity, rebuilding our lives with renewed hope and creativity. Now let's look at the seventh toxic habit that the Stoics avoided at all costs: the tendency to argue vehemently and try to be right at all costs. The Stoics understood all too well that heated debates often backfire. Defending a point of view tooth and nail without flexibility is not only exhausting, but it often leads to polarization and a lack of mutual understanding. This is not about abandoning our fundamental ethical principles or adopting positions without conviction. The Stoics were passionate advocates of just causes. However, they also knew that rigidly holding to our opinions, believing that we have the absolute truth, only distances us from constructive dialogue. This arrogant stance does not resolve complex issues. On the contrary, it only increases division. The problem is not in having firm convictions, but in identifying our self-image with a specific position in a rigid and intolerant way. When we view any opposing view as a personal attack that must be refuted at all costs, we distance ourselves from real debate. We must have the flexibility to listen and consider different perspectives, while keeping an open mind without compromising our core principles. Now let's talk about something fundamental: the art of discussing and innovating with true wisdom. Too often, we find ourselves stuck in debates over issues that, at first glance, may seem minor, such as differences of opinion on sports or methods of solving operational problems. What usually happens? We lose warmth and intellectual humility. Instead of exploring different perspectives that could enrich our understanding, we cling to our ego and try to crush the other at all costs. The toxic dynamic of win at any cost distracts us from the search for multidimensional truth. Instead of defending real values, we end up defending only our ego. Of course, the Stoics did not encourage abandoning fundamental ethical ideas just to avoid conflict. They knew that there are deep truths and inalienable rights that are worth fighting for resolutely, even in the face of opposition. But there is a crucial difference. Holding to fundamental principles is one thing, and believing that we have the absolute truth on any complex subject is quite another. The Stoics had a healthy distrust of mobs that consider themselves to be the holders of absolute truth and are ready to cancel and destroy anyone who dares to question their beliefs. For them, wisdom lies in tolerance and openness to exploring other angles, without being trapped in a single limited view of reality. They believed that no matter how convincing our arguments, there will always be areas that fall outside our limited experience and prejudices. This lesson is especially relevant in the context of innovation. When someone brings revolutionary ideas, they often face incomprehension and even hostility from the masses, who are attached to the status quo. Any brilliant mind that dares to challenge dominant paradigms must have not only the fortitude in the face of social pressure, but also the humility to incorporate valid criticism. True progress is achieved by allowing ourselves to be challenged, refining ideas as we examine them in new lights and perspectives. The Stoics teach us to avoid two harmful extremes: excessive flexibility, where we end up adopting ethically reprehensible positions just to please the masses, and dogmatic rigidity, where we believe we have all the answers and disregard any form of constructive criticism. Instead, we must cultivate a balanced approach that combines firmness in our principles with openness to new ideas and perspectives. True wisdom, then, lies in listening, exploring, and integrating different perspectives while maintaining the courage to stand up for our core values. In this way, we can navigate the complex world of ideas and innovations with integrity and intelligence, contributing to a richer dialogue and more meaningful progress. Imagine this: you are faced with an ethical dilemma or a complex philosophical discussion. What do? Do you cling to a rigid view, believing that your way of seeing things is the only correct one, or do you allow yourself to be like bamboo, flexible and open to new information? True wisdom lies in the golden mean, being firm as a rock on crucial principles, but flexible as bamboo when it comes to integrating new perspectives and information. The Stoics understood that the ego likes to simplify the world into black and white, good and bad, because it gives a sense of control and certainty. However, the reality is much more complex. Truly important issues often have gray ethical nuances. Rather than paralyzing ourselves with doubt or clinging to one extreme, the Stoics encourage us to contemplate dilemmas from multiple angles, strengthening our ability to think critically and connect ideas that seem to be in tension. This means understanding, without necessarily justifying, all the human motivations behind actions, whether good or bad. We must condemn mistakes firmly when necessary, but without dehumanizing the guilty. Separating actions from people requires considerable emotional maturity, especially on issues that affect us deeply or when we feel attacked. True wisdom lies in exploring sensitive issues calmly and avoiding simplistic reductions. We must seek understanding and mutual growth, not as gladiators fighting to the death, but as apprentices who value the exchange of perspectives. To ignore any notion that runs counter to our comfort zone is to miss a valuable opportunity for learning and growth. Now, speaking of simplicity and frugality, the Stoics promoted these values not out of a blind adherence to poverty, but because they saw ostentation and waste as absurd. Clinging to perishable material goods as if they were the key to happiness is, in fact, an illusion. True fulfillment comes from cultivating a simple and frugal life, where we value what really matters and are not enslaved by superficialities. Have you ever stopped to think about how we are constantly chasing something that makes us feel complete? The paradox is that the more we engage in a frantic search for luxury and ostentation, the more we become prisoners of anxiety. The Stoics understood this perfectly and warned us, basing our happiness on external things is a trap. Let's face it, living surrounded by luxuries may seem like the recipe for happiness, but this incessant search for more puts us on an endless treadmill. As soon as we achieve a new level of comfort, we are soon craving the next one, believing that true happiness is always just beyond our current reach. This hedonic treadmill is a vicious cycle that never completely satisfies us. The Stoics were not saying that we should live in poverty or deprive ourselves of life's pleasures. On the contrary, they valued a comfortable life where basic needs are met. The problem begins when we center our self-esteem and happiness on these external possessions, believing that they have absolute value. The search for validation through ostentation is futile and leaves us more worried and dissatisfied. Think of the age of social media. Today, flaunting luxury has become almost a sport. We see ordinary people, often in debt, showing off their luxury cars, extravagant homes, and expensive jewelry, all in the pursuit of likes and admiration. It's as if every event is an excuse for a status quo show. Birthday cakes with edible gold, gigantic bouquets, swimming pools with panoramic views. All of these are carefully posted with vibrant hashtags to highlight the supposed luxury and exclusivity. But deep down, we know that this ostentation is just a facade. The reality is much simpler and often chaotic. The fleeting luxuries we flaunt in our glamorous photos do not bring lasting happiness. They are illusory achievements that distract us from our true personal greatness. We get caught in a cycle of seeking external approval, forgetting that lasting value lies in our character and the virtues with which we treat others. In the end, the Stoics' message is clear: we must focus on what really matters. True happiness lies not in accumulating material possessions, but in developing honest character and virtuous conduct. Let us abandon the race for ostentation and focus on what truly makes us great. The pursuit of external validation will never be enough, but the satisfaction that comes from living a virtuous life is unshakable. Stoicism teaches us that an obsession with luxury is a sign of deep-seated insecurity. When we feel insecure, we seek external validation, flaunting material possessions in the hope of receiving respect and admiration. But this is a temporary placebo. True self-esteem comes from within, based on virtues and character, not material possessions. The Stoics argued that this desperate quest for status is fueled by irrational fears: the fear of death, the fear of being forgotten, the fear of not fitting in. We try to fill these internal voids with external things, creating false identities to mask our insecurities. But this is a trap of the ego, which is never satisfied and always wants more. The Stoic proposal is simple and radical: drastically reduce ostentation and focus on developing our inner virtues and talents. We should strive to be better people, build meaningful relationships, and leave a legacy that transcends the material. In the end, what really matters is what we give to the world, not what we own. No one on their deathbed regrets not having bought more things. The real regrets are about not having loved enough, not having grown as an individual, and not having helped others. The Stoic proposal is to free yourself from superficialities and focus on what really matters. Stop chasing false greatness on social media and focus on being truly great where it really counts. Your life is short. Don't waste it pretending to be something you're not. Your true essence is much more interesting and valuable than any digital image. Don't dim your real light to try to impress others. Instead, shine with your true strength and virtue. Another crucial point that the Stoics avoided was envy and resentment towards the success of others. These feelings distract us from our true goal of self-improvement and the pursuit of virtue. Instead of comparing yourself to others, focus on your own growth and development. The Stoics invite us to a life of simplicity and frugality, not out of contempt for worldly pleasures, but because they understand that true happiness cannot be bought. It comes from within, from peace of mind and personal integrity. By letting go of the relentless search for external validation, we find true freedom and fulfillment. Have you ever noticed how easy it is to fall into the trap of comparing our lives to those of others? This habit not only makes us feel dissatisfied, but also robs us of peace of mind. The Stoics, wise as they were, warned about this centuries ago. Seneca advised us not to be tormented by the possessions of others, because they do not guarantee happiness, but rather rob us of our peace of mind. Marcus Aurelius reflected on this idea when he stated that every man's life is sufficient, but his mind is constantly distracted by the outside world. He reminds us of the importance of focusing on our own inner growth, rather than being distracted by the achievements of others. Rather than resenting the good fortune or success of others, the Stoics encourage us to celebrate those successes and learn from them. This attitude frees us from bitterness and motivates us to focus on our own abilities and possibilities for growth. Epictetus expressed this when he said that envy is the companion of ignorance. By understanding this, we can appreciate that each person has their own unique path and challenges. The Stoics warn us against allowing our worth and self-esteem to depend on external comparisons. They teach that true greatness comes from within and that we should aspire to be the best version of ourselves, not a lesser version of someone else. By adopting an abundance mindset, we understand that there is enough success and happiness for everyone. This frees us from incessant craving and allows us to practice gratitude by focusing on our strengths and virtues. Another crucial point that the Stoics avoided was the tendency toward revenge and prolonged resentment. These negative emotions, far from being a manifestation of strength, are seen by the Stoics as a clear indicator of weakness. They signal that we are allowing the actions of others to dictate our emotional state and behavior. Revenge, according to Stoic philosophy, is contrary to the ideal of self-discipline and inner freedom. Marcus Aurelius advises us that the best way to avenge yourself is not to be like your enemy, implying that true strength lies in upholding your principles and acting with integrity, regardless of how others treat you. For the Stoics, forgiveness is not a concession to another person, but a personal liberation. It is an act of affirmation of our social nature, which prefers harmony and cooperation to conflict and division. Rather than harboring resentment or seeking revenge, the Stoics recommend using adversity as an opportunity for learning and personal growth. Every conflict or difficult encounter is a chance to exercise our virtues and reaffirm our commitment to a virtuous and meaningful life. Imagine for a moment a world where there is no room for revenge or resentment. This is exactly the world the Stoics aspired to create. They taught us that by reflecting and examining our actions, we can overcome destructive tendencies and build a more peaceful and productive existence. This practice is not just about external ethics, but a crucial component of our inner empowerment. Adopting an attitude of forgiveness and focusing on our own growth is essential to maintaining our inner peace. This better prepares us to face life's challenges in a constructive and compassionate way. In doing so, we not only strengthen ourselves individually, but also contribute to the creation of a more understanding and less conflictual society. This approach aligns perfectly with the Stoic ideals of wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation. We conclude our journey through the toxic habits that the Stoics avoid, wisdom that inspires us to refine our conduct and strengthen our character in the hustle and bustle of modern life. By applying these Stoic teachings to our daily lives, we are not only eliminating negative behaviors, but also cultivating a calm presence and a resilient spirit. This allows us to face challenges with dignity and inner peace. I hope this journey through Stoic principles inspires you to reflect on and perhaps transform the way you interact with the world. Remember, it's not about suppressing our emotions or denying our experiences, but about choosing how we respond to them. As Marcus Aurelius rightly pointed out, it is our response that defines our path toward happiness and wisdom. I invite you to share this video with those who, like you, are seeking meaningful change in their lives. Stay until the end, share your thoughts, and join a community of thinkers who value tranquility over turmoil, depth over superficiality. As we move forward, remember that each conscious step taken and each habit changed in pursuit of virtue not only transforms us individually, but collectively elevates us toward a more conscious and harmonious society. Thank you for joining me on this journey of discovery and growth. Let's continue together to explore and apply the lessons of the great Stoic masters, building a legacy of strength and serenity. If you've made it to the end of this video, congratulations! It demonstrates your dedication and commitment to learning and personal growth. Keep seeking knowledge and working to become the best version of yourself. Learning is an ongoing and rewarding journey. Let us know you made it this far, and we'll see you in the next video.